All right, let's head over to frame 312 through 317. Many frames in this section want you to write the alto and tenor voices without retaining the common tone in the same voice. Now this can be done, but you need to watch your part writing very carefully to make sure that you are following all of the part writing rules. Okay? And when you do this, also keep in mind that you really do not need to leap more than a third, really, in any of the upper voices. Any leap larger than a third should be thoroughly examined. You know, it might just be a simple part writing error. So we have to write tenor and alto voices, okay, without retaining the common tone in the same voice. So let's look at frame number 1 here. Frame number 2 and frame number 3. The first thing I want to do is make sure I can spell my triad. So we've got to build a G, B, D triad here, an A, C, E triad for number 2, and a C, E, G triad for number 3. Let me just fix my alto voices. I forgot to put my stem down here for number 3 and number 2. There we go. Okay. So now we are going to look at the first one. And we need to build a GBD, but we're not putting the common tones in the same voice. So we can go from the E up to the G, and I have the G then doubled, and the D is in the soprano, so therefore the tenor can sing the B. And there's my interval of a third, and there's my interval of a third. So that works. Okay, for number 2, always make sure that you double the root in these. In this case, the root is already doubled because the soprano sings the A, which is what the root is, and the bass is singing. So we need to plug in our C and our E for this one. So it would make more sense to put an E here in the alto and a C here in the tenor. Because if I erased that and put the C here in the alto, that's a leap down for the altos of a fifth. We really want to avoid that. You want to go to the nearest chord tone when you're not retaining common tones in the same voice. So I'll go back and I'll put my E here for my altos, and I'll put my C here for my tenor. And there you have it. Root, root, third, fifth. Done. For the next one, some people had difficulty spelling the triad. Again, remember that bass. Whatever the bass note is, that's how we get our root from our triad that we have to build from. In this case, the soprano is already doubled because there's my root. There's my root. We need the third and the fifth. So what if we went up to the E in the tenor, and we went up to the G in the alto? Could we have gone down and put the alto singing an E and the tenor singing the G, or the tenor singing the G up here? Well, that would be a little bit of a stretch for the tenors to sing. Remember, keep in mind we want to go to the nearest chord tones with the voices and the intervals. So this would be your best case scenario to do this right here. So that's frame 312. Now for frame 313, they still want you to do the same thing. They want you to not retain the common tone in the same voice. Okay, so for this frame, I'm actually going to show you what someone did, and we can talk about it. So here I've got a D-F-A triad, Here I've got an A-C-E triad, and here I have an E flat, G, B triad. But notice that I do have a figured bass of a flat 5, which means I need to flat the 5th, therefore making my triad E flat, G, B flat. Okay, so if we head back over to number 1 of frame 313, we have to build a DFA triad. So here's what some of you came up with. I'm going to draw it in now. So I have a D, that's the root, and I have another D in the altos, so the root is doubled, which is good. My tenors are singing the 3rd, and my soprano is singing the 5th. Do you see anything wrong with that? Well, the problem is just the interval leaps that the alto and tenor are singing. It's really unnecessary. So how can we best write this? I mean, I wouldn't especially like to be an alto or a tenor singer having to sing, you know, a perfect 5th down right there. And then this interval here from an E all the way down to an F, we're talking a major 7th. That's very challenging and very tricky, and they won't enjoy that very much. So rather than do that, we can probably think about switching the alto and tenors. So what if the altos were to sing the F up here, like so, and then the tenors could sing the A. That's a better example of not retaining the common tones in the same voice and less of a leap of an interval. So I have the D, F, and the A. Is that right? Hopefully you're saying no, because what I've done is I've actually doubled the 5th. I have 2 A's rather than 2 D's, which is the root. So you might have been able to pick that up when you saw that this interval here is quite large, a 5th for the tenor to sing. So I want to make sure I go back and really check my work and double the root, in this case the D. And now the tenors are very happy because they're only singing a 2nd. So that's how you would do the first one in frame 314. Now if we look at the second one, we need to build an ACE triad. Let's consider putting the A, doubling the root in the alto, and let's consider putting the E here in the tenor. Does that work? Not so much. My interval right here is greater than an octave, so I'm breaking a part writing rule. But what if I were to bring this up the octave? Would that work? Well, it is now within an octave, but it's not exactly nice for the tenors to be singing a major 7th ascending. So your best bet here is to double the bass with the tenor voice and have your altos singing the C like so. Correction, the E like so. This motion is fine. In fact, this is really nice motion because the bass is descending and all of the other voices are moving in contrary motion to the bass. Really, really nice example there of part writing. Okay, for number 3, here's where some people got a little bit confused. For number 3, you have this flat 5 here, which means you have to include a B flat. That wasn't the confusing part. Many people actually got the B flat, but they didn't double the root properly. What is the root of this triad? Well, it's an E flat, which means that you have to double the root. So you're going to need another E flat, which means you have to put the flat sign. If you don't put the flat sign up there, then you're dealing with an E natural. And that's not really the triad that we're looking for. Okay, so for this one, let's consider doubling the E flat in the alto. Since the alto's singing an F, that will be nice for the altos. And let's consider the tenors then singing the 5th, which is the B flat. Now, if you left your answer just the way you see it now, like this, it would be incorrect because you need to double the root. The alto is not doubling the root until I include this flat sign. Very important. Okay? It's still incorrect because now we have to follow the figured bass. I need to remember to make the B natural a B flat because of the flat 5 figured bass. And now you have a completed triad. Again, this is a really great example of where the bass is ascending while the other 3 voice parts are moving down in contrary motion to the bass. Very nice. For frame 314, the same thing needs to happen. We need to be able to not retain the common tones in the same voice. All right, I want to draw your attention to the second one of frame 314. And I'm going to actually draw in what some people did. Okay, there was a response. So now first, let's build the triad. So here is my oops. There we go. Sorry about that. So here is my root, which is a B. So I need to build a B, D, F triad. But if I look at my figured bass, I have a sharp, a /5, which means I need to raise the 5th scale degree 1/2 step. So now it's B, D, F sharp, which is a B minor triad. So let's see if the person who did this, if the pitches are actually correct. B, B, D, D. So I've got 2 B's and 2 D's. So I seem to be missing the F sharp altogether. But there are other issues with this one that I actually want to point out to you right now. And I'm going to use my highlighter for that. Okay, so right here, what you have is, you probably identified this already, right here, okay, this distance exceeds an octave in length. So we really don't want that at all. That's breaking a law, a part writing rule. Okay. Now, additionally, there's something else going on here that I need to bring to your attention. I'm not sure if you can actually see it, but we have parallel eighths, parallel octaves happening. And I'm going to point them out to you right now. Let me get a different color so you can really see it. I'll use orange. So in this example right here, we've got parallel octaves. And it exists between the bass and the alto voices. So let me draw a line connecting them. The bass is singing an E, and the alto is singing an E. In the very next chord, the altos are singing a B, and the basses are singing a B. That's considered parallel octaves. Let me rewrite that. I'll write it over here. parallel octaves, and that is forbidden. So when you check for parallel octaves, parallel unisons, parallel fifths, you need to be checking, remember, between all of those voices. What do I mean by all of those voices? I mean, you have to check the soprano and the alto. You have to check the soprano with the tenor, the soprano with the bass. Then you have to check the alto with the tenor. Then you have to check the alto with the bass, and then you have to check the tenor with the bass. From moving from one chord to the adjacent chord to make sure that there is no parallel octaves, parallel fifths, parallel unisons happening. Okay, so how would we rewrite this so it's better? I'll stay with my red pen for now, and I'll show you what we can do for this one. So we're going to actually, we can't retain the common tone in the same voice. So our bass is B. So let's double that in the tenor, and we'll put a B right here for the tenor. So I've got two B's, a D, which is leaving me with the altos to sing the F. But is it an F? No, it's not. Remember, you must adhere to what's in the figured bass, which is that /5. So I need to draw the sharp sign next to the F in the altos, making it an F sharp. And there is what your triad would look like. All right, now for frame 315, let's move on to this one. For frame 315, some of you I think maybe just didn't read the directions, or we might still be a little bit uncertain as to the difference between open and closed structure. Okay, so they want closed structure for frame 315. So what we have to do is, again, make sure that we're building our correct triads. And this example, we start getting into a key signature, and we have to write the inner voices. Remember, inner voices, we're talking about alto and tenor. And we also have to provide a Roman numeral analysis. Okay? Now, since these triads are in root position, we do not need to put any figured bass numbers next to the Roman numerals. All right, so first, what we should do is probably our Roman numeral analysis and figure out our triads. So the first triad looks like it's going to be B flat, D, F, that's major, capital 1. Our second triad, the bass note is F, so we have to spell F-A-C, which is going to be our 5 triad. Please write your 5s, your capital Roman numeral 5s with 2 lines across the top, please. Okay, the next one, back to B flat, D, F, that's our 1 chord. Then our 5 chord, and then our 1 chord. By the way, these whole notes, this whole note right here, that's the bass whole note, and this is the soprano whole note. We still must provide inner voices for those whole notes. Some of us forgot to do that when we got to the last measure here. So this is a chord progression. We have our opening chord progression of 1 to 5, which is a great opening chord progression, and then we have a 5 to 1, which is a great closing progression. Notice the sopranos have a nice melodic line going up to one high note and coming right back down. So now we're going to have to fill in the voices. So let's try to do this using close structure for all the chords as specified in the directions. So we're going to work from the top down when we do close structure. So we start with the soprano, and here is a spelling of our chord B flat, D, F. Sopranos are singing a B flat, so the next chord tone down from the B flat would have to be our F, and that's what they would sing. The next chord tone down from that would be our D, which is what the tenors would sing. So now we have closed structure. The next chord, we need closed structure as well. So we have FAC, so the sopranos are on a C, so the altos must sing the next chord below that, the next tone below that, the A, which means the tenors are going to go up high here and sing the F. They can reach that. Okay. So far, I like the first measure. The bass is moving down, while the other three voices are moving in contrary motion. How lovely. Next measure, we've got the one chord in closed structure. So I have a D. The next chord toned down. Remember, this is the one chord, so this is going to be our B flat. By the way, it's not necessary to write any accidentals next to some of these notes, like the B flat and the E flats that we're going to be writing, because we have that key signature. Okay, so I've got the alto singing a B flat. The next chord toned down from that is going to be my F, and the tenors can stay right on it. The next one is my 5 chord. I wonder if I can make this 5 chord the same way I did my other 5 chord. Well, I'm going to have to, because the bass is still singing that same F as in the first measure, and I need close structure, where all the chord tones are close together, where I can't fit another chord element inside. So I'm back to that. For my last chord, I've got to make sure I draw whole notes, okay? Not half notes, but whole notes. And sopranos are singing a B flat. Next chord toned down. For my one chord, altos will sing an F, and then tenors will sing the D. Now, let's go back to the beginning and make sure that we have 2 roots, 1/3, and 1/5 for all the chords. Root, root, 2 roots, very good. The 3rd, the 5th. Root, root, 3rd, 5th. Root, root, 3rd, 5th. Root, root, 3rd, 5th. Root, root, 3rd, 5th. And it works. And that's how you would do closed structure for all the chords in a harmonic progression. It's not as interesting as open structure, but it works. And if you were to analyze every single voice part, adjacent voice part, you would not come across any part writing errors. Okay, let's head on over to frame 316. Okay. And we are going to first do our Roman numeral analysis after we realize what key we're in, G major. Looks like we need to provide the inner voices again because our stems are up for soprano and down for bass. And let's get our triads going. So G major, we have, this is GBD. Let me switch to my purple marker, which I like to use. GBD, CEG, GBD, CEG, GBD. All right. So I've got my major 1 to the C in the bass. My CEG triad is going to be my Roman numeral 4. Then I have back to my 1, then back to my 4, and then back to my 1. Again, another great opening chord progression, your 1 chord to your 4 chord, and then another great closing progression, your 4 chord to your 1 chord. And if anybody happens to remember what that was called, that's your plagal cadence, where you go from your 4 to your 1 chord, which we'll learn later on this year. If I head back up to here for a minute, your 5/1 cadence is called your authentic cadence. Very common. Okay. So, we're actually, oops, I've gone too far. We're actually going to do this one, and now the directions call for us to use open structure. Open structure means I can fit a chord tone inside. So, let's simply do this. Look at the soprano. The soprano is singing a D. So then we're going to have to skip the B chord tone, and the altos must sing a G. Then we skip the chord tone, then we're going to have to skip the chord tone of the D, so the tenors would sing a B. And that's open structure. Let's head on over to our next chord. Soprano singing an E. We're going to have to skip the C. Sopranos would sing altos would sing a G, and they'd like that. They're staying right on it. This is nice oblique motion that you have going on right here between the soprano and alto. Oblique motion. If we skip the chord tone below G, we are going to arrive, skip the E. Now the tenors would sing the C. And this is lovely contrary motion right here between the bass and the tenor. In the next measure, let's go back up to the D, and I believe it's going to look and sound the same as the opening chord in this chord progression, like so. These little dots represent the chord tone elements that we are skipping, because that's what open structure is, where you can fit a chord tone inside. And just one chord tone really, because if you fit 2 chord tones in, chances are you're breaking the rule of adjacent voices exceeding an octave. Now we're up to the 4 chord, which is C, E, G. Okay, what's the difference between this 4 chord and this 4 chord? Well, the difference is it's not quite as high. In the first 4 chord, you had an E within the soprano. Now you have a C. So that means the altos can't sing the G, they're skipping the G, and they're singing the E. Skip a chord tone, which is middle C, we can skip that one, and we have to bring the tenors down to a G. Finally, my last chord tone. B, skip the G, altos sing D, make it a whole note. Skip the B, altos sing, tenors sing G. Now go back and make sure that your roots are doubled and you have the 3rd and the 5th in each chord. And it should work out, and it sure does. And that's a very nice progression. For frame 317, they want you to use open structure for all chords. Now we're dealing with a minor key. Okay, so let's figure out our chord tones first. A's in the bass, A, C, E. D's in the bass, D, F, A. Back to A in the bass, A, C, E. E's in the bass, E, G, B. Notice the sharp sign by itself. That means to raise the 3rd. 1/2 step. And then back to A, C, E. That figured bass sharp sign is probably a good indication that this is the harmonic minor form, not natural minor form. Okay, so now we go back here and we make open structure. Sopranos sing in C, so we're going to skip the A. They have to sing the E. Then we're going to skip the C so the tenors can sing the A. There's my doubled root right there. Next chord. Oh, and that's going to be our minor 1. I forgot, we should probably do the Roman numerals. Then we have DFA, and if you know that D is 4 in A minor, and you already memorized that in minor, the 4th triad is in fact minor, it's lowercase 4, back to lowercase 1. Here, we need to make sure it's major 5 because of that F sharp, E, G sharp, B creates a major 5 chord. And then we have our minor. So we filled in our Roman numerals. Now we're going to go back to the second chord, and we're going to start from the top down in open structure. We need to build DFA. There's my D. We skip the A. Altos arrive on an F. Skip the D. Tenors arrive on an A. They're going to stay there. Next measure. Next measure is going to be the same as the first. Like so. Skip that one. And now we're up to my major 5 chord. We need to build E, G sharp, B, and have 2 E's, right? Because you always double the root here. So we're going to make it open spacing. E. Then they would skip the B and sing this G, but we have to call it G sharp. And my last chord is open, starting from the A for sopranos. So I have to skip the E. That brings altos down to a C. Skip the A. That brings tenors down to an E. If you look carefully at all these voices, adjacent voices, upper adjacent voices are no greater than an octave in distance, which is nice. Very smooth writing here for all my parts. My alto voice is singing intervals of no more than a third. Tenor singing intervals of no more than a third as well. So I really hope that these videos are helping us get a better handle on part writing and voice leading for SATB. There'll be more to come. Thanks for watching. Oh my god, I didn't record any of that, did I?